Joe Kelly, the co-founder and CEO of Unchained Capital, is with us today. Super excited for this podcast. It's been a long time coming, and yeah, welcome, man. Welcome to the Sound HSA show. Absolutely. We saw each other at Bitcoin Vegas, and yeah, we've got a lot of cool things coming up. Really want to use this time though to let our listeners and our audience learn more about Unchained Capital, about you, the history of the company. And yeah, we can start anywhere, but how about at the beginning? And let everybody know kind of how you came up with the idea of Unchained. Maybe your Bitcoin origin story too, as a part of that, would be a great place to start.
Born and grew up in Anchorage, Alaska originally. So that I was kind of in a frontier state, or a frontier state of mind from an early age. And I also, as a teenager, got to live in Venezuela for a period, and kind of had that early awakening to like, wait, they say the price of bolivars is this, like 2,000 bolivars gets you $1 or vice versa. But in the black market, or like the guy at the marina that like is in the business of exchanging money, you can get 3,500 bolivars from him for $1, or like these kinds of oddities of money, like, and how money's done differently and valued differently, and what was good or better money for people. And then after making my way to Austin and becoming an entrepreneur, my co-founder here at Unchained is Drew, and this is our second company together. So we've been working together for 17 plus years. And we sold our first business. It was in data analytics company. We sold that in 2013. Both decided to buy Bitcoin at the same time, got more and more into the space and understanding it as an asset, its role and its future. And so, yeah, went in kind of ideating what to work on next. We knew we wanted to build a company. Unchained was the one idea that we thought we could work on for the next couple of decades, but that it just had the intellectual like gravitas, or like the kind of gravity to it that we could wrap our heads and arms around for a long time. And there was a clear need, being ourselves Bitcoin holders for a few years at that point, when deciding to start Unchained in 2016, for financial services, things that really integrate and bridge the real experience of using Bitcoin and with your everyday life, or your and not even just everyday life, like spending, more of like the concerns of your family and the security of it, and how to access liquidity at times without selling. Things like that were the idea space we wanted to work on. And so we just started going to task on what was our first product, which was Bitcoin backed loans.
Fantastic. And, a lot of people in the space, I think, they come into Bitcoin at different times. You were relatively early, I think, when most people hear 2013. I came in 2016 and was had just left a surgical device startup. And I think you have to have a moment in your life. If you're not a sound money person kind of at your core to start with, if you did not have that influence early in your life, you can really, I think, only find this technology when you have the mental bandwidth in your life and to stop and to study. Because especially here in America, most people, really don't think that we have a monetary issue or monetary problem. And so, yeah. So appreciate that background. So you started the company around lending. When did you think about expanding the services, and kind of in the self-directed piece, when did you guys start thinking about things like IRAs, for example?
Yeah, the idea of doing more than lending was there, definitely in the beginning. And it is pretty understood that just lending as a business model, you're generally lending other people's money anyways in the first place. And so you're just somewhere in that flow of a transaction that, as you then also see quickly within Bitcoin cycles, there are times when people want to take loans because Bitcoin's up, they feel like the asset's more valuable, and they don't want to sell in front of things, and then there's times when the asset's down and that behavior decreases. And so it's already a cyclical kind of business. And so it doesn't always have a lot of strong foundations, or a lot of like enduring characteristics. Like the lenders or pure play lenders of the last decade or two, like a Lending Club or other online lending platforms, they work because they then have scale, where we were already clearly focused on the long-term Bitcoin holders. The steady point, or the North Star, was always the customer and the client being the long-term Bitcoin holder, or the product that they either get from us or get within an ecosystem, or get from a surrounding set of services with us. It's always identified with that profile of the person that decides and is convicted and knows they're going to hold Bitcoin for decades. So then, in designing lending, the central challenge is how to de-risk the loan, where the loan is secured by Bitcoin. You want to make sure that Bitcoin doesn't walk away or you lose it somehow. So that led us to develop the custody architecture we have and have really relied on since, relying on multi-signature cold storage. And that underpinning, did become our vaults product, which was the next major product after loans, and launched that in early 2019. And that was, the realization that people would want maybe just custody from us, not just a loan. And they can use this way that we do it, and this kind of unique way you can now integrate with Harvard wallets, which again, only then we're at enough of an adoption point and like some technical compatibility pieces to be able to use it with our application. And then IRAs was natural because people were doing that on their own. We had folks that, Jeff Andrew, our CFO and chief legal officer, he came into the business because he had his own practice, both as an attorney and CPA, but then also he had the Keykeeper IRA business, helping people hold Bitcoin and IRA in self-custody, and the platform of choice for that frequently was Unchained, because you're really trying to solve, really trying to connect the idea that this Bitcoin over here in multi-sig storage, or what's happened to be in multi-sig storage in this context, it's held by these keys. It's outside of the legal system. It's outside of any system that cares about it, from what lawyers and accountants need to see, or regulators, or the government, or the IRS kinds of things. So sometimes that's by design, or that's why those things are there. But when it comes to practical use cases, like having it in your IRA, or in some context that is then relevant to the IRS somehow, you kind of need an institution. You kind of then need an account type structure that clearly titles this asset in the name of somebody or in the name of some entity. And so that's where Unchained lives at the intersection, or often the value proposition for us is connecting the physical, quote, real form of the Bitcoin with the legal system, with things that are titled and have to do with people and entities.
Yeah, no question. The concept of self-directing investments, that number's growing. I think when people, a lot of people have IRAs, they have other accounts like HSAs, but the concept of self-directing, outside of kind of TradFi is a growing segment, but it's still relatively small. How do you go about? I mean, how do you guys go about thinking, about corralling that market, educating? Because I think we certainly think Unchained's got the best, IRA product in the business and the custody arrangement. How do you guys go about, educating your customers, educating potential customers around the benefits of self-directing into Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I like the way you distinguish that. I mean, I do think that self-directed as a category is only growing, and in traditional TradFi kind of version, traditional securities, brokerages like Schwab and otherwise, and then maybe called Robinhood self-directed, but that's like gamified self-directedness or something like that. But then the overlap between that and self-custody is real, because maybe looking at self-custody as a type of self-directed behavior. So that's kind of been there. So we constantly work at that, that hill of educating people on self-custody, why you should hold your own keys, kind of a thing. And it's relevant because I think a lot of the communities and the types of clients that Unchained has attracted, and companies like us that have existed in the kind of Bitcoin frontier world, rather than being at an existing bank or financial institution, is we've only worked with the self-directed archetype. And so then often the marketing comes from the self-directed people telling their friends, or and then also putting your flag out there, putting out your beliefs, putting out what you're doing as a company in a way that mission aligns with what these people are trying to do for themselves. And then that's what's created brand resonance, or that's what's created a loyal client base, and then also I think positioned us and others to do kind of right by the community, or be aligned with the community of people that, even though they're self-directed, or Bitcoin holders often are independent-minded and behave in that way, they're still looking at a set of values that are pretty common among these groups. So that the individualistic, or questioning of authority and assumptions, and the sound money and the basic beliefs that you started with, that's there in this community. And so sometimes we're not always having to educate them on that part, but the key holding and the other aspects of Bitcoin is just a big part of our approach too.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think, too, as we think about self-directed sound, the HSA piece that we can get into here in a little bit, but with the advent of like the ETFs, and some of the proxy, products, paper products, Bitcoin wrappers, if you will, that allow people to hold that, we understand the value of holding actual Bitcoin, and I assume that's a lot of people that find Unchained and the IRA products you guys offer probably have already made that leap. But how are you thinking about, and I'm sure you have this conversation, the benefit and the value of holding Bitcoin as opposed to a proxy instrument in a self-directed account?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot here in this part of the texture. I think one is interested in the value proposition question. There's no question that if at the limit, if all Bitcoin wasn't able to be self custodied, then it would be just less useful, uh, less worthy. It's because the self custody side exists, and that this is something that can be used as currency worldwide without an intermediary is a very defining value proposition. So that's just a key thing, and then that's without then unpacking even other ideas about forms of property and ability to hold one's own property in a way in a digital landscape that was increasingly impossible to do. And then on the uh, the tension though is as any asset that's come to exist and then becomes financialized or work within a financial system, that there's the trend towards centralization. There's the trend towards it being there. And in some ways, because also it's more efficient for banks to offer their services to more and more people in this kind of a way, that then even the pricing works better. I think taking, for instance, like margin loans as an example of the category of Bitcoin-backed loans and the spot territory that Unchained works in, our cost of capital are just higher than if you're at a brokerage or a large bank that already lends against ETFs and other securities, and then this is Bitcoin ETF, like sure, margin against that too at the same rate. There's that challenge of scale, and then even back to the end client in person that wants to own Bitcoin. That if the Bitcoin is always just more useful because when it's in the ETF form, because it's at the brokerage, because to get all the other brokerage bells and whistles, usually mostly margin rate though is what people mean. Then that's a challenge. So for me, it's kind of it is a healthy challenge though, and I think it's actually a motivation for companies like Unchained and Sound HSA, because then our goal is to make it as useful, like to make it as competitive to hold it physical as it is to hold it ETF or hold it in some other form. And if it can be leased at the same cost or delivered at the same or equivalent cost, then hopefully it's also safer or less risky. Or it's not commingled. It doesn't have counterparty risk to it the way it would if it's sitting at a bank among a pool of other clients' assets. So that's it's like a rally cry for me type of an idea of how to our loans. I know they aren't as cheap as margin somewhere else today always necessarily you can get at the institutional scale of BlackRock, but it might be in a year. Like if we can get them there, then that really that's got to be the goal.
Yeah, yeah. It was really important to me. When I came into the space and we originally contemplated releasing Sound HSA, and this was 4 years ago, kind of coming out of COVID. Looked around, and the Bitcoin IRA product had been around for a bit, right? There were other companies. You guys, had been around for a year or two for the IRA product, and I was like, I want a Bitcoin HSA, and it just didn't exist, right? So all you had was proxy exposure with counterparty risk. Yeah, MicroStrategy was great over the last 5 years and others, but I mean, we know the value of holding the actual asset. That it's insular in a lot of ways, to offset just future erosion of inflationary pressures of the dollar, and having that sovereignty over your asset in a tax advantaged account just made so much sense. And, that's the reason why we launched the product, was to give people power over their future health spending because, and we can talk about it in a minute, but just the inflationary pressure of the U.S. healthcare system in terms of cost. I mean, there's no other category with higher inflationary pressure over the last several decades than in healthcare. One question: what percentage of your IRA customers are first time Bitcoin buyers? Right? Maybe they found you guys. They feel really good about Unchained's process and custody. Are most of your customers former Bitcoin buyers, or is it their first buy sometimes within the
In the
product?
IRA, it's rare that it's their first buy, frankly.
Okay.
And I get there from a couple ways. Platform wide, some people have definitely bought their first Bitcoin from Unchained and into like Unchained Vault, holding their own keys and gone through that whole process. But it's a smaller percent, lower, maybe 20%, depends on the place. Usually people have bought elsewhere, want to accumulate more, to boost them over, and then they may start buying here or continue to accumulate elsewhere and drop it in their vaults. But and so I expect IRAs to work similarly. And furthermore, it was different when, I mean, there are now some more IRA solutions, but again, back to the idea of if you want an IRA where you can hold your own keys, Unchained's really the best, most natural choice. And so, but the people that know enough to know that's what they want to do, usually it's because they own Bitcoin elsewhere. So they know they want this kind of format for their IRA holdings. So this is it's not their first stop.
Got it. A good deal. What have been your key learnings since you guys founded the business? Obviously, the market has evolved. The Bitcoin market has evolved. Customers' needs have evolved. You guys are on the front end of the lending piece, and obviously financial products and services. What have you learned, really? What has your team learned as you guys have evolved the business over time?
I mean, so much. There's a lot of internal lessons, and like how to run a Bitcoin company. You're forced. I describe it to us like you're riding two roller coasters at once. Generally, startups are their own wild ride, and then dang if you don't have this other layer of the Bitcoin cycles. I mean, there's few industries. I mean, oil or like these other industries that have just like one dominant variable that is like the commodity price that just then affects everything. That can have a compounding effect in Bitcoin. So just learning how to be that, but that's like a learning that you never quite have the answer of, or you can never get it perfect. I think also assuming because it's also a new space and Bitcoin's not even yet 20 years old yet, and even a company like Unchained, we've been around now longer than half its history. So that just they're quite done. Like you haven't evolved every needed or useful thing. Even the decision on Unchained to launch trading next to our vaults 5 or 6 years ago it was controversial at the time because in some ways it felt like, well, isn't exchange a solved problem? Don't people already get to go buy Bitcoin where they want to? And then no, really, I mean, realistically, like you still need kind of more options, and there is, and even in the 5 or 6 years since we started, there's more infrastructure you can use as a company like Unchained to integrate with other liquidity providers and places to buy and sell Bitcoin, and ways to drive better economics for clients, so they're always getting the best price and execution kinds of things. So there's just an evolutionary process of the space that each piece kind of gets to build on the other. And some ideas were tried, very early. Like we weren't the first people with the idea of Bitcoin-backed lending. Not even the first people to propose it. Maybe but I know. I mean, by now it's like we're the longest running continuously operational Bitcoin-backed lending program since having done it since 2017. So that means there's still always like unexplored niches and places to start up things that the time wasn't right years back. It could be right sometime soon.
Yeah. No. Where do you see your business going? You guys are market leaders. I think best in class in terms of quality, character, integrity, customer service. I mean, I can personally attest to all of that as well. Where do you see your business going over the next 3 to 5 years?
Mix of things. I think there's always the idea of just you look at the range of services Unchained offers and will offer, and a lot of them look like the things you might find on like a Chase website or a website at some kind of big bank. But still at the core, the way the services are delivered through clients being able to hold their keys, things done in what we call Bitcoin native way. That way still works. It's anathema. All the banks are challenged by an innovator's dilemma to how to go about building products in the space correctly. And so our goal and our thesis is to try to outlast all of them, last as long as Bitcoin is. It continues to be this foundational asset for everyday Americans and the global financial system at large, and layer those services on in the right way. Like not, you know, that's another thing to learn as a company over time as you do start, and you do maintain these Bitcoin principles. It's never that they change or you have to compromise on them, but they have to also adapt. They have to be adapted into things. But it's where do you start from? Are we adapting the Bitcoin native way into these products and into how these products should work? Or again, the inverse of the problem at traditional institutions is they're trying to adapt their existing model, and they're kind of putting that on top of the asset that is Bitcoin, which just does work radically different. So, getting to keep our roots in Bitcoin, developing more financial services for current and future clients, and trying to grow that story.
That's fantastic. I think it's a good segue to get into the HSA product and our partnership that we'll be announcing probably the time we release this video officially, that Sound HSA is partnered with Unchained and Gannett and Horizon Trust to offer a multi-sig, multi-institutional custody solution for our customers. And we're so pumped for that, Joe. It's again, this has kind of come full circle, and we think it's a best-in-class solution for our customers as we contemplate where the product is, and really delivering a world-class user experience for a self-directed product like an HSA. And so maybe some thoughts there, because I know our teams have worked together in standing this up, kind of the evolution of seeing the vision of what we're all trying to put together, and why it made sense for Unchained to do this.
Yeah, well, we're so stoked to have you working with us. Really excited for this use case. Again, I think back to that menu of those financial services, like a lot of institutions also at the end of the day, we can't do it all, nor is it appropriate or are we advantaged or the client's going to get the best price or experience or anything like that if we did. And so the more that, especially even on the kind of platform side or the platform story for Unchained, the idea that custody is hard, that connecting with other institutions around custody is it's a painstaking process to try to get right and make sure that the keys are set up appropriately, and that those kind of relationships will endure for as long as people are expected to keep assets in the model. And so as long as we can kind of do our job there, and then when it comes to really specific and useful applications, like a health savings account, that also has a lot of the great characteristics, even the way that Jeff has always made the comment about for our IRA product that it's really custom fit for like what the IRA needs, and merging those concepts of legal titling and ownership and things that regulated institutions understand with really strong security, and leaving the asset there. Like it's not a high frequency trading kind of use case, or not something that needs in and out all the time. And so when those kinds of things are true, those are really great things to be able to jump on. And I'm excited that both our clients at Unchained, some of whom are aware or piecing aware of Sound HSA over time, can have this option. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, we're super pumped. I'm gonna share some information and may jump around here a little bit, but to give our viewers and listeners really a bigger flavor of what problem we're really trying to solve, and talk a little bit more about the custody arrangement with you guys. And these are stats that you and I have talked about before, but Fidelity released this statistic at the top last year that the average couple in America will need $350,000 plus starting at age 65 to fund their healthcare needs throughout retirement. That's separate of any long-term care premiums, which we know that arena has grown tremendously, and that number will increase, adjusted for inflation. So we spend more than anybody in the developed world on healthcare, all in, and we're the sickest developed country. So that's a separate conversation. But suffice it to say, from a subsidy and a Medicare, Medicaid standpoint, those entitlements may or may not be there for you or for your children. And so we really felt the opportunity was, okay, we've got to give people the opportunity to save and sound money. And what better way to do it than the HSA product? So kind of getting back to kind of what the model looks like with Unchained and how our custody solution is going to be teed up. And again, this is live now. So any Sound HSA customer that comes on board will have the benefit of this multi-institutional custody arrangement, where Horizon Trust, who issues the regulated product of the HSA in concert with Unchained, and then Gannett Trust to hold the keys, and the user fully directs that journey, which is really important. So again, over time, Joe, it could be quite possible as an adjunct that we introduce the customer to hold, keys in this arrangement, right? And so maybe it's a 2 of 4, but we're super stoked about this arrangement and coming on board with you guys. I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about the tax advantages, and this is a big part of what we do every day, is to educate around HSAs. And if you look at the fiddle factor of traditional HSA products, they can be pretty high, right? They're clunky. And then even like a self-directed product, when people come into our platform, and I applaud Unchained's user experience. I think it's one of the best. It's one of the simplest in the industry for what you guys do. That was important to us as well. Was to create a clean user experience and to educate the consumer along the way. So when you come into our platform as a customer, you'll instantly see that, hey, what is the maximum contribution level for 2026? And we've got that. And we help people stay on track to make sure they don't overfund their account. And again, another example of that would be what are the eligible expenses, right, within an HSA that I can actually get reimbursed for? And traditionally, that was kind of stodgy and boring, but that list has grown too. And so much so that now you can get a letter of medical necessity, and your HSA can pay for things like infrared saunas and even beef. And so we just help people understand how you really can optimize the product. The big beautiful bill in last year had 10 provisions around HSA legislation in that bill, one of which is now that bronze and catastrophic plans on the marketplace are now HSA eligible, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of things that have happened recently that have expanded use and eligibility of health savings accounts, and we anticipate that to continue. Sound HSA was invited to join the HSA Council under the American Bankers Association. So we accept that invitation, and we look forward to continuing to affect policy in DC around some of these issues. But yeah, we're super excited about that. And then the reimbursement piece, we've got some cool things to come on that as well, to allow people to more seamlessly go through that process.
Because normally the flow is the HSA would pay direct to the provider services, or is it? Because
yes,
the reimbursement's only like a minority case, I guess, perhaps.
So you have a couple of options, right? You can, if you have a debit card attached to the account, you can use the debit card at point of sale, drugstores, your doctor's office to pay for a copay, et cetera, anywhere that would accept, a debit card transaction. Every account has the ability to reimburse the customer for out-of-pocket expenses. We have that too to start. We have integrated, though, and we'll be releasing this as well in our mobile functionality, where you'll be able to snap a picture on the go, and that will upload to your Sound HSA dashboard. And it doesn't stop there, though. We've integrated AI technology to smart read the receipt to tease out HSA eligible expenses. So if you're at Walgreens or CVS and you've bought razors and maybe shampoo or toothpaste, but you also have a couple of out-of-pocket copays for prescriptions, our tech will pull that out, will populate into your Sound HSA dashboard, and go ahead and upload that and essentially create your future tax-free piggy bank. Because remember, the HSA grows tax-free, and then you can reimburse yourself in perpetuity for any and all out-of-pocket expenses. So we enabled that function, so it's gamified. You get to see, in this case, you get to see your USD balance and your Bitcoin balance, but you also can see your receipt total as you and your family go throughout kind of your health journey through life, and be able to see what you potentially could reimburse yourself out of your Bitcoin savings in the future. Yeah. So we're super pumped about that. Yeah, Joe, anything else before we kind of wrap up today? Anything that you want the folks to know about Unchained? You know, in kind of the future of this partnership.
I think it's just exciting extension of things done around real Bitcoin, and where the custody matters, that the asset's going to be there when you need it or want it to. We're talking about accounts that people might not be tapping into. You can always tap your HSA annually, but that in the long run, back to your statistic about the need for retirees to have, what will eventually be $500,000 in the coming in only a few years for post 65 health. That's just really important savings, really, really important assets to have around. So it's great to merge that use case with Bitcoin. Applaud what are doing, and I'm grateful Unchained can play a role.
Yeah, no, it's great, and we're dedicated to providing a great user experience, user interface to make the HSA even more functional and easier to use. It's a $200 billion market. Most of that is sitting in HSAs with the big boys melting in fiat, and people really don't know how to optimize it. And again, education is so important. Literacy around health benefits, and I know that can sound really boring and stodgy, but we're really looking forward to approaching the Bitcoin market and then bringing more people into Bitcoin. It's back to that question I asked you. It's like, hey, if you're going to buy Bitcoin and save it for the future, it's not a bad idea to have some of your stack in tax advantage instruments like an IRA or an HSA, just from a financial standpoint. If Bitcoin does, from a compound annual growth rate, what it's remotely done over time, you're going to want some tax sheltered sats, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of how we think about it. And, when we talk to customers and potential customers. So
it's where the IRA equivalency or thinking about those comparably makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, we'll wrap up. We're right at 45 minutes here, and that's kind of what we like to keep these to for the listener and for the viewer. So again, thanks so much. We're excited about our partnership with Unchained and the future that's ahead. So appreciate you, man.
Likewise. Thanks, too.
Okay, man.